Hi everyone. Today let's talk about AMD again. Of course, as soon as I talked about AMD, it did go down quite a bit, so we'll talk about why that is. Then of course we'll go over the technical analysis. We'll talk about my trades so far with AMD. Then we'll finish up with possible trades for the upcoming week. If you like trading stocks and options and making money, definitely like and subscribe. I make videos like this as well as portfolio overviews every single week, so make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future content. Welcome to the Portfolio Bulletin. Let's get started. So AMD stock tumbled. So let's take a look at why that might have happened. They say AMD lost 8% this week, dropping about $16 billion in market cap, despite the fact that AMD is expected to grow its sales year over year by 31%. And they did get a price cut of around 22% to 115, down from around 150. So the stock is actually trading well below 115 right now. So even if this is true, this still says to me that AMD is a buying opportunity. But let's see exactly why. So they're mentioning the fact that AMD is a cyclical company, meaning that the demand for computers is not a steady flow. And the chips that they produce for individual computers is a pretty big piece of their business right now. But as I mentioned in my last video, they are moving more into the industrial and server-sized chips with a little bit more power and a little bit more consistent demand for companies like this. They say the company is not in jeopardy of missing its 30% year-over-year growth by 2022, and they go even further saying that AMD is actually going to continue to gain CPU market share. AMD has delayed some of their chips to 2024, meaning that Intel won't be able to compete as strongly, but they say there's no evidence of broad aggressive marketing, meaning that profits for both players could go down based on the competition. We say that the street high price is $200 for AMD, representing around 85% upside from current prices, with the midpoint being around that 150 level that I mentioned in my previous video. I also want to mention really quickly that Intel did announce a new graphic chip in order to take on AMD and Nvidia. I don't really see this as a huge threat for AMD right now, and you can see that all three of the major chip makers did go down, where AMD went down the least out of the group at 1% versus Intel at 3% and Nvidia at 2%. Otherwise, they say Intel is launching the new Arc 3, which is a very entry-level GPU, basically to dip their toe into this industry and start making money, making a product they really haven't been competing for in the past. They say they're going to launch the Arc 5 and Arc 7 in order to compete even more directly with AMD and Nvidia, which does feed into the previous article saying that it could drive down profits for all of these chip makers. However, I don't see this as a major impact to AMD because this is a growing industry and the need for chips is really high right now. So in my opinion, this may be a small speed bump for AMD until Intel really proves that these chips are worth having versus their competitors. Moving over here to the technical analysis, you can see you had a nice little run up with the rest of the markets. Pretty strong blow off top here on March 30th. Big down move, and then a gap through what I thought would be a little bit of a support level, and then a huge move down over the next couple days, all the way to this lowest level of support around $106.50, which you could kind of argue is a little bit of a support level from this previous double bottom we had, but this would have been a pretty weak trade for me and not sure. I certainly didn't expect to see a bounce here, but I also didn't expect to see this large of an aggressive move down compared to the rest of the market, so really could go either way. I'll show you in a minute. My trading, I did take off a position up here. This definitely looked overextended after this really aggressive rally. This was clearly really strong at around 22% from the lows. But then we saw a big retrace of around 15% back down to the most recent lows. You could certainly argue that this is a little bit overextended. We're around 8% from those midpoints, which you could argue is somewhere around that 115 price target. And looking at the MACD here, you can see we did hit a pretty strong level of downward momentum and started to trail off with a little bit of an up move in that last 4-hour candle. I would expect at the very least we'll retest this 9 EMA somewhere around $110, so maybe a slight up move into the start of the week. Once we hit that, it's hard to say exactly where we're going to go. It seems like it could go up or down from there. If this is a really solid level of support, we might get a retest and a continuation up. That would be ideal. But this is pretty aggressive, and maybe we could see a nice little V-shaped recovery back up to this previous level of support, around that 115 price target that I mentioned. Right now, in my opinion, this is definitely short-term bullish and neutral into the midterm. I also want to talk the tasty charts. Here we have AMD, and then I had the Qs just for comparison. So you can see this really large down move here on the 2-hour chart from this upper ATR band, well past that lower ATR, retested up here, and then further moving below that lower ATR band, compared to the Qs, which basically skirted that lower ATR band and definitely had some nice little up moves off of that third ATR band. And I do want to look at the 4-hour chart just so we can compare exactly what those same charts looked like. Again, well below that third ATR band, really aggressive down move, something that definitely, in my opinion, is unpredictable. So it is unfortunate that this happened in the first week after I did put out a video saying AMD is a nice little buy right now, but it did continue up just for a little bit before we had this pretty big down move and that downgrade that they mentioned. Moving over here to my tracker, you can see some of the options that I've traded in the last week. I was at the 119 strike, sold that for 275, bought it back for 181 because it looked a little extended, resold it after it went up in price a little bit at 225, bought it back here for 40 cents, skipped a little bit of downward price action here on that first big down move day, reestablished myself here at 113 for $1.50, and then we had that next big down move. And I did sell a call because I knew I was going to get assigned to try to further reduce that cost basis. Putting my total cost basis right now at 107.73 based on my last put strike at 113, and then the stock closed basically at 108. So I got a very slight dollar gain, 1%, not great over that first week, but better than losing even in that pretty big down move. Moving over here to the option chain, we can look at some of the possibilities. One thing I do want to mention here that I don't normally mention is the volume. You can see big volume here at the 110 calls, meaning that this is likely a pretty strong level of resistance, which is right back at that EMA that I mentioned previously. So for my trading plan over the next week, I'll probably look to sell some puts pretty early, look for that retrace back up to the EMA that I mentioned, and then I may look to sell some calls at that point. I don't really like to go short on stocks, so generally I stay on the long side. So for me, I'll look to sell puts in the short term and probably take them off. I'll consider selling calls because it is such a bearish looking chart, but most likely I'll stay on the long side. Otherwise, comment down below what you think of AMD. Is this stock going to plummet way further down than it is right now? Or are we going to see a nice little bounce into the midweek and maybe some sideways price action? Definitely comment down below what you think the future of AMD is. And make sure you like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video. Again, I make videos like this every single week, so make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future content. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes, and have a great day.